Ooh, fancy.
Okay, so welcome to Vermont Music Show, a place where Vermont musicians talk about Vermont music and their musicianship and tell the stories of how they got here and where they're going. Hosted by myself, Will Andrews, aka Wolverine, and
Mark Daly, aka Medela.
In this week's episode, we'll be talking with singer-songwriter, guitarist, music therapist, and proud Hoorach 585 native Marcie Hernandez. I have a lot of a place in my heart for Rochester, New York.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not from there, but I've spent a lot of time there. But we'll talk about that later. So I found out about Marcie and her music while scrolling through YouTube last winter, around the same time as her album was released. Her wonderfully designed and shot music video for her single Light a Torch caught my eye, and I started to check out more of her music, only to realize that her newest record, I'm going to screw up the pronunciation. Could you pronounce it for me?
Sure. It's Amanecer.
Featured some of my good friends backing her up. What's up, Pat Melvin? My guy, Pat Melvin.
Yeah.
The record is beautifully recorded and the songs are full, unique, and complete. It makes me think of Nathy Peluso, produced by the Daptones. It's kind of like the idea for me. We're very excited to talk with Marcie about her music, what it's like to be a music therapist, and her love for Vermont winters. Shout out to Ray Paget. I know you had that question. So pumped to be talking with you today. Marcie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I read the Ray Paget thing on the county tracks about people asking you about Vermont winters at a wedding. That was kind of funny.
Yeah. It was totally just like that moment of having the same small talk conversation over and over again.
Yeah, and were you like, I grew up in Rochester. It's like the same, you know?
Yeah, totally.
I love Vermont winters as well.
Oh, really?
I do. And I feel like year after year, I find myself liking them more and more. There's something nice about like the hibernation. It's good for writing music. There's less like pressure, like summers where you feel like you have to do everything. And like walking in the woods after a snowstorm when the snow's still on the trees, there's just something like so magical and like Narnia about it, you know, just like, oh, it's magical.
Yeah.
Well, let's start like a little bit in the background, you know, a little bit more about the background information. Sorry. About like where you grew up, like starting music in Rochester, like a little bit of that story, if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I will say, just like, speaking of the winter, I feel like the winters here are a lot prettier than they are in Rochester.
Very true.
Rochester kind of has that like industrial sort of like gray
Yep.
feel to it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Smog.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I grew up in Rochester. Both of my parents are from Puerto Rico though. So I had a very bicultural upbringing. And so my mom moved to the States when she was in her 20s. My dad moved to the States when he was really little. He was like 5 or 6. So it's also interesting because even though they're both from Puerto Rico, they also are just like very different in that my dad has like no accent when he speaks English. He's like very Americanized in a way, but my mom is much more like connected to her roots. So it was like an interesting upbringing in Rochester. I think it was different in a sense for me because of that cultural thing happening at home. And so, yeah, I started singing really young as a kid. It was just sort of like a natural thing, and was really like attracted to music. And my mom is a singer, my grandmother's a singer. So there's definitely a lot of music in the family. And yeah, I started taking voice lessons when I was about like 12, like formal lessons. And I also started taking piano lessons, and I remember I wanted to drop the piano lessons after about like 6 months, because it was just kind of, I don't even remember my teacher's name necessarily, but it was just sort of boring, like scales, and I was just like, this isn't fun. Kind of wish I'd stuck with it, but then I did end up actually studying piano again for music therapy. But yeah, I started as a singer and then went to college at SUNY Geneseo in upstate New York as well, and started as a vocal performance major.
Cool.
And yeah, so I was doing lots of singing, and but then into like my sophomore year, I kind of had this moment where I was like, well, if I want to sing, I don't necessarily need to have a degree unless I want to like do opera or like be like this classically trained singer, which was kind of the path that I was going down. And I was just like, this isn't really this isn't the type of music I want to do. So I ended up switching majors and getting a minor in music. And I was sort of scrambling at the time, like, all right, what can I get? Like, what can I finish in the next 2 years? So I ended up with a degree in communications and PR. And so,
nice.
Yeah. And at the time I was like, maybe I could like work at a theater and do something like that. And so I ended up doing that. I moved down south to Charlotte, North Carolina, right after college. And just kind of on a whim. I didn't really know anybody in Charlotte. I lived with my uncle for a few months, but I just wanted to do something different. And I was actually seeking warmer weather as well. It's like, I'm sick of the winter.
Good idea.
So I moved down to Charlotte and started working at a theater down there. It's kind of like the equivalent to like the Flynn Theater here.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was fun. It was a fun first sort of real job, quote unquote. And it was funny because I was like 24, 25, and it was the first time I was making like a real paycheck. And it was just that thing like, I'm rich, I'm making so much money. But I actually wasn't.
Maybe the fact that it was just steady made you feel rich. Like, oh, it comes like every week or two. This is amazing.
Totally. But it was cool. I got to see like a lot of different shows, and we would have different acts come through and big musicals and stuff like that. But I also really missed having like a creative outlet, and I wasn't really doing anything with music. But I was making a lot of friends in the area, and sort of getting to know the local music scene down there. And so at the time, like I didn't play guitar or anything. I just sort of was hanging out, but I started going to a lot of open mic nights and being friends with other singer-songwriters. And interestingly, like I'd never really been in that world before. Like it just wasn't something I'd done when I was in Rochester. So as I started to go see more of my friends play in clubs and bars, I was kind of like, I feel like I could do that. And so, like that just inspired me to pick up the guitar and start to learn how to play so I could write songs. And I was always a big writer. Like I always had journals, and I would write a lot of poetry when I was in high school. And I always loved when I was in high school in particular, I would like write down the lyrics of all the songs that I liked, even if I had like the jacket already with the lyrics. But it was this weird thing that I would do. Like I would just listen obsessively to the music that I really liked, and I would like write down all the lyrics, and just sort of like, I think it was almost my way of like learning the craft of songwriting in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't writing my own songs. I was just like listening to stuff like Radiohead and Tori Amos and Ani DeFranco, but also listening to a lot of Spanish music simultaneously. And so yeah, it's always kind of funny to me that I didn't actually start writing songs till I was like a bit later in life, like in my mid-20s. So yeah, and then that kind of led me to music therapy. I got really tired of my office job and realized I didn't want to sit in front of a computer all the time, and have always been interested in psychology, and have always also been interested in the power of music to connect and to provide a source of healing. And so, you know, at the time I was sort of grappling with what to do, and wanting to be a singer and a performer, but also honestly getting a lot of like messages from people like my parents, like, well, you know, you should have something to fall back on. And so I was like, well, what is that thing going to be? And I think that's what led me to music therapy in a way, because it was this nice combination of things that I was already interested in. And yeah, I ended up getting my degree in music therapy in Charlotte when I was already down there. And then that was 2 years of more school to do that. And then a part of the training is you have to do a clinical internship. And so I decided to go up to Brooklyn, and I worked in hospice care doing music therapy for like end of life care. And that was like a whole other wild experience. Yeah,
for sure.
Sounds wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
That's kind of, I feel like I'm sort of rambling, but that's.
No, I mean,
that's great.
That's great. There were a couple things that I thought of. Well, first thing, Mamma Mia's, the pizza place in Geneseo.
Yes.
So like I grew up in like the Albany area, so, and then have lots of friends that, you know, out in Roch, and I had friends that went to Geneseo and SUNY Binghamton and Oneonta and all over the place. So I've spent some time out in Geneseo. My cousin went there. I love Geneseo. That's great. Charlotte, also a fellow Queen City like Burlington, which is,
that's right.
I know a little bit about Charlotte too.
Oh.
But I mean, there's so much cool stuff. How did you end up in Vermont?
Yeah. So I was living in Brooklyn when Hurricane Sandy happened. And so it was kind of it was interesting. I was in a relationship with someone, and we were already kind of talking about moving to Vermont because we knew a bunch of people here. So when Hurricane Sandy blew through New York City, I ended up losing my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been working at this nursing home doing music therapy right on Coney Island, and like the whole place just got totally destroyed. And so yeah, it was crazy because no one realized how bad that hurricane was going to be. And so I remember I left the hurricane came on a weekend, so I had left work on a Friday thinking I would come back on Monday, and I just like never went back to the building again. Like,
that's wild.
We weren't allowed to go back because it was just so bad. And yeah.
Like, did it get dilapidated? Did it get flooded? Like, or all of the above? Like, what happened?
Yeah, it got flooded. And the residents had to be evacuated, like emergency evacuation. And then it was just sort of like taped off, and like we weren't really, I mean, I probably could have maybe sort of snuck in. I had some stuff that I wanted to get. I had some instruments that I had left there, but I remember I talked to a coworker and he was like, yeah, it's really hard to get in there. Like it's all just like blocked off because the damage had been so bad. So,
Wow.
so that was the catalyst for leaving New York and coming to Vermont, where there's winter storms, but well, I guess there are hurricanes up here.
There was
sometimes.
Like 8 years ago or something like that. There was one. But
Okay, yeah.
There was weirdly a tornado in my hometown of Middlebury, not too far south of here. It was so random. There's a mile-long tornado not too long ago in Middlebury. So
I
weird.
heard about that.
Yeah. So weird.
Yeah.
So when you came up to Vermont, did you start your own like music therapy practice, or like how'd that transition go?
Right. No, I did not. I came up here and I was a little nervous. I didn't really know what I was going to do professionally, and the idea of starting my own practice seemed sort of I felt so green, like in the field in general, that I felt a little like I don't know if I've got like the experience to do something like that yet. So I ended up, I worked at the Howard Center for about a year, and that was great to just like get to know people, and I was just like talking up music therapy all the time, and I'm a music therapist, and this is what we do, and this is what that is. And then I eventually met, there's about like 10 or 12 other music therapists in Vermont. It's a very small group of us.
Yeah.
And so, and that was the other thing. Before I moved here, I like Googled and researched if there were other music therapists in the state that I could connect with. Gotcha. And so I found someone, and so I worked for, her name is Jen Debadou. She's got a music therapy practice in Burlington. And so
that name rings a bell.
Yeah. She's been in the area. She's been practicing for like over 20 years. Huh. Cool. Yeah, so I was able to work with her, which was great. I got a lot of really good experience, and worked within her practice for like about 4 years, and then started my own thing about 2 years ago. So I've been able to have my own practice now for the past couple of years, which is and so grateful, especially throughout COVID, because I had like just started it and didn't know what that was going to look like. But yeah, it's worked out.
So you say that this woman has practiced for 20 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. I sort of thought like music therapy was a relatively newer form of therapy. So am I wrong there? And it's just so cool to think of someone doing that for 20 years. Like when did it like start surfacing, or like what's the history behind music therapy? If they're
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is relatively new as a profession. It started around the 1940s.
Cool.
Yeah, so it started, some of the first sort of like accounts of music being used as a modality for healing were with veterans coming back from World War II, where they started to have musicians like go into the hospitals and the medical facilities, because they were noticing that it was just like improving their quality of life, and like people were getting better faster.
That's when so there was cool.
Music. Yeah. So that was kind of like the beginning of it. And then that got a lot of doctors and scientists and people that were more in the medical world interested in, how could we use music in a more targeted, specific way to to work on therapeutic goals or healing in this way. And so then I think, I'm not sure when the college programs started popping up exactly,
Right.
but I think once like colleges started to have programs that really helped the profession be sort of like boosted up a little bit more, and it became something that like you could study and train for, which is cool. But yeah, music therapy, it's interesting because it is a really niche field. And I mean, I think even within the country, the numbers are small in terms of like how many certified music therapists there are. And it's also a very female, like dominated field, which is interesting to me. Like we'll have conferences and it's a lot of women. And I'm like, we need to like balance the gender, like just it would be great to have more balance, but that's just what I've noticed, what I've seen.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah,
Got to be some reasons out there, but
yeah, just my observations. But
yeah,
I mean, that being said, I've met some great like male music therapists as well, and yeah, it's definitely not, it's, I mean, I could talk about music therapy for the whole hour. So feel free to cut me off if you have more specific questions.
I mean, I think it's like, I'm a teacher too. I work at Winooski High School. So, anything, like I was wondering about like, who's your clientele? Is it a lot of kids? Is it older folks? Like, is it just everyone? Like, what's that like?
Yeah. So I've worked with all types of folks, really all ages, from like really, really young to very old, end of life. Right now, primarily I'm working with children, and I'm working with kids both like within school systems. So I have contracts with like different school districts, and I work with kids that some of the kids I work with have histories of trauma and have like emotional behavioral stuff that we work on, ADHD, that kind of thing. And then some of the kids I work with have special needs like autism and Down syndrome. And then some of the kids I work with are receiving palliative care services. So that's kind of a separate population, and a lot of those are home visits, which with COVID have turned into more virtual visits. And in the past, I've worked a lot with older folks that have memory impairment, and music is very similar to our sense of smell, where like it's really tied to our memory. And so that's why for folks that have memory impairment issues, they often can remember songs from their youth, but they can't remember a lot of other things. So it's a form of connection for them, and yeah.
That's so cool. While we're on the older people thing, I was really curious, like, what was the most important thing you took away from doing music therapy with older folks that are like in the hospice care, like on their deathbed? Like what was that experience like? What was the most important thing you took from those probably crazy experiences?
Yeah. It's probably the most powerful experiences that I had in hospice. This happened a couple of times where I would hear something like, I would go to see a patient and the nurse or whoever had, was there would tell me, this person hasn't spoken in days, weeks, like we're not getting anything out of them. There's been no interaction whatsoever. And so I'll just be like, okay. And then I always ask what is their musical background, like what's their musical history, because that's what I'm gonna play off of. And if there's any favorite songs, you know, what did this person like? And so this happened with one patient where he happened to be Puerto Rican. And so he knew, I knew one of the songs that it's an old love song, Spanish love song. And she was like, yeah, he loves this song. I like someone in the family told me this. And I was like, okay. So I started playing the song and he started calling out for his wife. And this was someone who like hadn't spoken in days. And like she had said, like he's barely opened his eyes. So, you know, it just like touched something in him where he responded. And I feel like that is the power of music. Like it can just more than like just talking to someone, you know, playing a song to someone that they have an emotional connection with is just incredibly powerful.
Wow. That's so sweet. That makes me want to like tear up. That's so But yeah, it can like evoke so many different feeling or like bring out so many different feelings in someone, like memories, even like smells of when they heard the song. And maybe there's, I'm just trying to think of all the different things one can associate with a song. Like you said, it's crazy how powerful that is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Wow.
Do you play a lot of music, or do you like perform in those sort of sessions? Are you performing, or are you like sifting through Spotify and being like, let me like what does the actual like music therapy session kind of look and feel like?
I was curious about that too.
Yeah. That's I get that question a lot for sure. So it's very client centered. And so a part of your training is to be able to, you learn a lot of music. And that was kind of a part of why I wanted to do it too, because I was like, oh, this is going to make me a good therapist, but this will also make me a good songwriter. Cause I'm just like, I have to learn all of these songs.
Yeah.
You must have to learn so many tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because if someone, you know, comes out and is like, well, I love, you know, Joni Mitchell, if, you know, maybe I don't know any Joni Mitchell songs like right off the bat, but maybe I could play like Bob Dylan or like something that's sort of like similar. And so that's kind of a part of what you learn is to at least like replicate different genres, like something bluesy, something rock. It gets a little tricky. I don't work with a lot of teens. And there's music therapists out there that work, you know, with a lot of teens. And I'd say like, I don't know a lot of like rap stuff, and I can't really like, that's where I would pull out the Spotify and be like, I'm just gonna, but it's really interactive. So within music therapy, you know, one of the guiding principles is that human beings are musical. And so, you know, the people I work with don't need to have any type of musical background, but we really encourage interaction. And, you know, it's like, depending on what I'm working on with my client, I want them to be participating in making music with me.
Right.
So, and songwriting too, like I've definitely like have written songs with clients. Songwriting actually at end of life is is like sort of using songwriting as a way to like talk about your life. And I've worked with folks that want to sort of leave a legacy, and we create a song together about their life, and they pick the music and they help me like put the lyrics together.
That's
so it's
beautiful.
Super interactive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I love doing that kind of stuff.
You're making me want to do this job. Like, I'm like a stay-at-home dad, musician. Like we all know how hard it is to make it. I'm like, should I have done this? Fuck.
It's never too late, Mark.
Right,
It
right.
isn't.
It's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I will also say it's hard because, you
Right.
know, sometimes sessions, there is a part of it that's kind of like it's therapy. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Right.
I work with people that, particularly like within the schools, sometimes like that you have to really uh, be patient, and you have to like build a relationship with someone. And sometimes they're not that into it, or uh, so you can have these really amazing moments for sure. And then you can also have sessions where you leave and you just feel kind of depleted because it's like, whoa, that was really heavy. Or,
Yeah.
you know, um, like I've had sessions with older folks that have Alzheimer's. And because of just like the nature of that disease,
Mm-hmm.
especially as it starts to progress more and more, and yeah, I've just had some sessions where it's like everything I did and nothing worked.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's the best cover song that you know, or like the most unique one that you've learned or that you've had to play in that sort of setting?
That's hard. That's hard to pick, but the first one that comes to mind is one that I learned recently. I learned Crazy Train, um, Black
Is that?
Sabbath.
Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
right. Yeah.
And so yeah, I was working with a child that just was really into that song, and he's
That's
all
awesome.
about like rock and roll and like being a rock star.
Yep.
And so I would like set up all these drums for him, and we would play Crazy Train. And I was actually like, this is a really fun song to play.
Yeah, the song rocks.
Going off. Yeah.
I feel like I ran out to that song in high school. My basketball team ran out to that song in the warm-ups. I might be wrong, but I don't know. There's an example of like a memory you have with a song.
Yeah.
Totally.
Crazy Train.
Sick. I like this stuff. We could talk about this stuff all day, but let's talk a little bit more about your own music. It's a really interesting story. At least the people that we've interviewed so far, a lot of them have this sort of background in music, and some people, like we interviewed Steve Haddock's awesome drummer a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I skipped my graduation to be gigging, and like something like he was like, what was he saying? He couldn't even drive, and he was playing in a cover band in Rutland. Like there's like a different path that everyone takes. It's kind of what I wrote down is kind of like this late season musician for you, like someone who's like always loved music, always wrote and played instruments, and then kind of just came into it in your mid-20s. Like that's just really cool. I love that sort of progression to it. And like, how did you get to this record that you released? Was it in December that you released it, or?
Almost. It was like November 20th.
Okay.
Late November.
So
Yeah.
how did this record come to be? It's a cool story about like multiple years in the process and that sort of stuff. Like, you just give us a little rundown of how you came to make it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I guess I had kept writing songs like throughout as I was working as a music therapist. I was still like writing a lot, and there was a period of time where I was super focused on music therapy, and I wasn't really like gigging as much. But then when I got to Vermont, I started playing out a little bit more. And kind of like dipping my toes back into that world. And so when I had been in Charlotte, I had made an EP with a friend. And it was just this very, like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And like 4 songs, and I didn't really ever, I had a release show, which was lovely. And I had a lot of really good friends come out and had a lot of fun doing that. But then I just didn't really do anything with it. Like I that's sort of around the same time I was like, I'm going to go back to school now and, you know, do this music therapy thing. So, so yeah, you know, I think for me too, to be honest, like I always felt a little shy about my songwriting, and I always felt a little like, oh, I don't know if this is really like good enough to record. Like maybe this is just something I do for myself in my bedroom and just leave it at that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there was a certain level of anxiety and kind of like, and I have a lot of friends that are really talented musicians too. So I think I just had a bit of this like, oh, I don't know. Like it took me a while to, I guess, take myself seriously in that way. Yeah.
It's a vulnerable position to write songs and to share your songs, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because as a music therapist, it's really easy for me to encourage other people to do that.
Right.
Like I'll support you in doing this really vulnerable thing. But I think, you know, I was able, I think in playing out more and just getting, you know, positive feedback from people, I think I was able to just build that muscle a little bit more and feel like, all right, yeah, like I do want to, I have like a batch of songs here that I want to record. So, yeah, when I first talked to Dan Davin, who recorded the record, I recorded at his studio in Essex. At first I was like, I think I just want to do an EP again, like just 3 or 4 songs tops. But then over time, I think because it was kind of nice because it wasn't the type of thing where I was like, I'm going to come in this weekend and we're going to record this album, you know, in 3 days. It was just very loose and casual. And so, over time I wrote a couple more songs and realized, you know what, like, I think this is going to be a full length album. Like I've got 7 songs and they all seem to fit well together. So let's just do a whole record. So, you know, I think I'm really happy with the album and just like so grateful for all of the awesome people that have played on, like that are on it.
Yep.
But I think there is some, maybe like the lesson that I learned is I don't think I'd want to take like 3 years to record a record again. Cause you know, there is like this, I mean, I wrote a lot of the songs a while ago.
Yeah.
Like Winter I wrote 5 years ago. So yeah, you do get to a place where you're kind of like, all right, I'm in a different place now, even though, you know, I still like to play the song. But the good part about that was that we did get to have these great musicians, you know, I think if it had been a very like strict timeline, it probably would have been harder to get that all done.
Yeah. Basically, sounds like what you're saying is a part of you is like moved on from maybe some of the former self or who you were when you wrote some of those older songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Mark and I have talked about this and talked about it with other people too. It's like when you write a batch of songs, it's this snapshot of who you are during that time, what you're dealing with, where you're at, all different stuff. And sometimes you kind of move on mentally or emotionally from that, but you still have to finish the record. And I wrote that down as like, I was wondering if the time frame for you from start to finish being 3 years was like a perfectionism sort of thing. Like you were like, it's not perfect. I got to have this. I got to have that. Or if or you were just cool with doing it in a relaxed sort of setting. 'Cause I think that's what I struggle with. Like, is it done? Is it perfect? Or can I add some more to it? Like for you, was it just, you were just relaxed about it? Or were you being a perfectionist about the mix or the parts or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was maybe a little bit of both,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there was a part of me that knew I had the luxury of time,
Mm-hmm.
which enabled the perfectionist in me to, to hyper. And for me, I get really, my perfectionist comes out around my vocals.
Yeah. Right.
And I just get, uh, so I think that that's probably where that came out the most, where I'd be like, nope, got to do another vocal take. Nope, that wasn't it either. And, but it was good. It definitely got to a point where it was like, all right, this needs to be done. This needs to get out into the world. And there was one other song. There was an 8th song that we were gonna, that was gonna originally be a part of the album, but I think that for time's sake, and also because I didn't feel like it was going to like mess up the vibe to not have that particular song on the record, I chose to shelf that one for this record. But it was, and then I think a part of it too was honest, like scheduling and like, Dan having to go on tour for a couple of months or something. And then, so some of it was that, and just like trying to get some of the musicians into the studio. Ray Vega, who I am eternally grateful that he did that trumpet part on one of my tunes, but he's like one of the busiest guys in like that I know in music.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like just really wanting to get certain people in the studio and just being like, we'll work with your whatever schedule you have. And yeah.
Getting musicians together is like herding cats. It's not an easy task, especially when you have busy ones too. It's just like, oh God. Sounds complicated. What comes first for you with like writing songs? Do you write them on guitar? Do you just have a vocal melody that pops out, or do you write on piano? Like, what's sort of the process there?
Yeah, it's I usually use the guitar, or I'll try to just come up with a melody. Like often in the car, I have to drive a lot. So often when I'm in the car, I'll just like
voice memo.
Totally. Voice memo. Or sometimes if I feel like I have no inspiration, I'll listen to some music,
Totally.
just to kind of get an idea of something, and then I'll shut it off, and then I'll just kind of like start making weird sounds in the car. So that's the way that I like to write. Sometimes when I'm running too, I feel like if I'm in motion, like walking, running, driving, there's something about like being like moving that is helpful.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it just puts me in a different space. But sometimes I'll sit with the guitar too and just try to like come up with something that way. It's funny because the guitar is very much an instrument that I feel like I use it for accompaniment. There was a period of time where I felt like I had to be like this epic guitar player, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to like practice guitar all the time. And then I sort of realized that I'm just like, that's not who I am.
I had the same realization.
Cool.
Maybe it's a guitar player thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Who
And
knows?
I guess I was just like, this is a tool that I can use to write songs, and like that's okay. Like I don't need to be playing crazy stuff on the guitar.
Shredding 24/7. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you.
So are you, a two-part question, are you planning on like recording another record sometime soon?
Yeah, I've got more songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that new record or that new batch of songs, like what would you keep from this latest album, and what would you change? Like mix wise, sonically,
That's a
songwriting.
good question.
Yeah.
Huh. You know, I've been more interested in getting into like using synths and like just trying things. I've always been really like I was just saying, like using the guitar for a lot of my songwriting, but I kind of want to try doing stuff that's just not quite as guitar focused necessarily. I've always been a huge Bjork fan, and I just have always loved what she does. So maybe incorporating elements like that, where it's like just more percussion driven and synthesizers. I really have like don't know very much about that world, but it's something that I'm interested in exploring. So that would be different. And yeah, you know, I think I definitely still want to keep doing stuff in English and Spanish. And I'm interested in learning more traditional. I've kind of been doing this a little bit, but just learning more about the traditional Puerto Rican music and incorporating some elements of that into my music. I think with one of the songs, like the Light a Torch song, the video that you'd mentioned,
Yep.
Will, you know, I incorporated a little bit of like that salsa feel into that song. But there's Puerto Rican genres of music that are just so cool and really traditional to the island. And so I would love to incorporate like the cuatro is like the Puerto Rican guitar. So yeah, like some cuatro and just some of the percussion as well. So there's this artist, her name is Lido Pimienta, and she is Colombian, but she's got this really cool, it's like she's sort of blending this contemporary pop kind of feel with traditional Colombian rhythms. So I've been listening to a lot of her stuff and just feeling really inspired.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's like
Can't
it
wait to hear it.
It makes me like I was just thinking about like your voice and kind of vibe over some, like taking some of those Puerto Rican rhythms, and like I don't know if you listen to Major Lazer. You ever listen to, like,
yeah,
that's my shit right there. But like I'm also very interested in synths and percussions, and when you're like, yeah, I kind of want to sound like Bjork, and I was just like, yo, holler at your boy. You know, Mark and I like diving.
You want us to produce it? That's why we had you on here in the first place. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I think that could be really cool. You know, I love that style, and it could be even if you tried out a single or a couple songs and that sort of vibe and just tried it out. That's cool. I love that idea.
Cool. Yeah.
Ditto.
Sweet. Well, thanks. Yeah. I'm excited. We'll see.
There's just so many cool rhythmic
Yeah.
elements from that style of music. And I feel like even more and more like the fusing of pop and like Colombian music, Puerto Rican music, Spanish music, like it's the two are merging more and more in the mainstream, which is really cool.
Yeah. You know that song Despacito?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, who
Isn't
doesn't?
that like one of the what year did that come out? Wasn't it like the year's biggest song, like globally?
Yeah, I think so.
And they filmed
I heard recently someone wrote a book about it, or
Really?
I think someone wrote a book about Latin, like the Latin music or Latin music, the history of Latin music. But Despacito is like a big part of the book because it was such a huge success.
And they filmed the music video in Puerto Rico too, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Nice.
Let's go through some quick questions for you. Okay. So to put you on the put you on the spot here. What's your biggest success as a musician?
Ooh. My biggest success. I think my biggest success has been, I think, getting over that that like initial fear, like I was talking about before, around like taking myself seriously as a musician and being like, I'm gonna record some music, and I think, I mean, the record is sort of the product of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that process of just like building confidence, and having the willingness to just like put yourself out there and be like, well, there's probably some people that aren't going to like this. It's not going to be for everybody, but that's a part of being an artist.
It's a giant hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
What's a song that you're upset that you didn't write?
Ooh.
Crazy Train?
It's such a masterpiece.
Ozzy, teach us the ways.
Totally. Let's see. There's so many songs that I wish I'd written. I guess that's tough. The one that I wish I would have written the most, I guess, Despacito.
Yeah, right.
Another callback.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess seriously, Lido Pimienta, the Colombian artist I mentioned before, her last record is just, to me, it's just mind-blowing. And there's one song, Eso que tú haces, that's on the record. And it's just it's so good. So yeah, I guess that would be my answer. Really any of the songs off her latest record, I wish I'd written.
Nice. What's the name of that artist one more time? Because I want to check that out.
It's Lido. So it's Lido, Lido okay. Pimienta.
Okay. Got it.
I
should probably write it down, but I've got it up here.
I can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
That's right.
I'll put a little link in the video too.
Oh, perfect.
Nice.
There you go.
What's your favorite lyric that you've written?
So in full disclosure, because I listened to a couple of episodes, I was wondering if you're going to ask me this.
Oh, sick.
I love it. You did your research.
There we go.
I did. I'm kind of a nerd like that. So I thought about this in case you did ask me. And I think there's this lyric in Winter that I've always liked. When barren branches pierce the sky, and the sun is sleeping, I'll take a picture with my eyes. When barren branches pierce the sky. I just like the alliteration in that line.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great line. I love that line.
Thank you. And then like it's hard to remember now. And the sun is sleeping, I'll take a picture with my eyes. And I was just kind of like, that was a moment where I was like, that's kind of clever. Good job, Marcie.
Yeah. High five.
Pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
What's your favorite like musical part of the album?
I think that's tough too.
Everything Pat Melvin played?
What's that?
Everything Pat Melvin played?
Yes.
Yeah, that's me too.
Everything. He's such a good guy. I hope you guys.
He really is.
Yeah. Hopefully, do you think you'll have him on the show?
If he ever returns my texts.
Come on, Pat.
No.
Big call out.
No, I'm gonna. He's a dear friend of mine. So
yeah,
he's on our list.
Cool. So yeah, definitely everything that Pat played. Tears just all the time. I feel like when I hear Ray Vega's trumpet on Light a Torch, I'm always like, oh, that's such a good moment. And then also in the song Quiet, Matt LaRocca played violin, and just his part, like, remember when we added that and listening, like that was a song where I really was like tearing up every time I listened to it, probably for the first like month. I was just like, yes, this just captured the vision of what I had. And so, and even like went beyond what I thought it was gonna sound like, in a sense.
See the VSO guy? He's associated with the Is he the director of VSO?
I'm not sure.
I think like a creative director or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's when you know you have a good song, when it's making you like cry multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's your favorite local artist that you don't know really well, but you love their music, but you don't know them?
Okay. Let's see. I would say I've always liked Dwight and Nicole, and I don't really know them very well. Ryan Montbleu as well. Mm-hmm. I've had little conversations with him, but don't know him super well. Yeah, and then I think those are the ones that come to mind, like right off the bat. I'm sure that there's more.
There's a lot of great musicians around here.
Yeah, totally.
And we're gonna talk to every single one.
Every last one.
Every last one of them. What's your favorite non-musical sound?
Ooh. I like the sound of like moving, like uh, moving water, like, waterfalls, that kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, so actually in Puerto Rico, there's a frog that's native to Puerto Rico. It's called the coqui frog. And at night, you hear these, it makes that sound. It's coqui, coqui. It's like, that's the sound that it makes. That's why they call it that. And so I was chatting with someone who lives in Puerto Rico recently, and she recorded the sound of the frogs like outside her window. And I had like an emotional response. I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And so I realized how much I missed hearing that. So I feel like that's probably up there as well. That the coqui frog, the chirp of the coqui frog.
That's awesome. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
They literally go coqui, coqui.
Yeah.
Wow. Frogs can make some crazy sounds, dude. Like how? Yeah. I feel like I've had a reaction to a sound before, and someone telling me it was a frog, and I was just blown away. I was like, "What? That's the frog?" I can't tell you exactly what the sound was right now, but like, yeah, quite the creatures, those frogs.
Yes, they are.
I wonder how many types of frogs there are out there. There's got to be a lot of different types, right?
Very much so.
Didn't think we'd be talking about frogs on this interview now, did we?
I think you have to
twists and turns.
You have to sample that frog, and that will be the beginning of your next single.
Yes.
It's a good 100%. Idea.
That's the way to do it. What do you suck at musically?
Sight reading. So when I was a vocal performance major for those 2 years at SUNY Geneseo,
yep,
I remember just like dreading my sight singing exams, and I was just always like, I'm just not getting it. And I would sit for hours in the practice rooms with the piano and just looking at the sheet music, and okay, I think it sounds like this, and the solfege and all the stuff. And yeah, I just hated sight singing, and I wish I was better at it, but I'm not. It's all feel.
I think you're talking to other feel people. So, are you good at sight reading, Will? Are you good at reading music?
Dude, I'm a trumpet player.
You are.
I can sight read the hell out of anything right now. I still practice sight reading too. Like that was something ingrained in you as a horn player, or really any sort of wind instrument, is like being able to, like, I can read charts. I can do that stuff in my sleep.
All right. Well, screw you. I'm in Marcie's boat here.
I'm jealous. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I'm jealous too.
We'll just feel the music.
Yeah.
What are you really good at musically?
I feel like I'm pretty good at improvising, just like making stuff up on the fly, and I do that a lot with my clients too. Like,
that's what I was wondering.
I'll improvise songs with them, or improvise songs about what they're doing. Like if they're not paying attention to me, if it's a little child, like a younger child, and they're totally distracted, I'll just start improvising a song about what they're doing, and kind of sing about, what's happening in the room. And so, and it's fun for me. It's kind of fun to just make up little songs. And I remember when I was in jazz choir in high school for a couple of years, and there was an opportunity for one of us to do like a scat solo, and I was like super excited. I was like, yeah, I want to scat.
How'd it go?
It went pretty well. I mean, I was like 16, so people applauded.
Scatting. God, that's so cool. Why is there's like a jazz cat association behind the word scat to me? It's like so, yeah, and then just, yeah. I don't know how to explain it, but that sounds really fun. Scatting in high school.
It makes me think of like, the first thing I thought of was you making like a children's record, or like just freestyling a song about brushing your teeth. Like, cause I have two little kids. Mark's probably like, I'm singing songs all the time about all the shit my kids are doing. Having a professional singer do it, that could be pretty cool, especially if you're doing it for work all the time, you know?
Yeah.
It also made me think of, I don't know about you guys, but would you guys long for, like you're singing what the child's doing, for instance? I've always thought it'd be so cool to just walk around and like your life is a musical and you're just like bumping into people and you're always singing, or there's some choir nearby singing what you're doing. Like, wouldn't that just be so fun?
Yeah.
It's essentially what sounds like what you were doing with this child.
Yeah, totally. Just trying to insert the music.
He's picking up the G.I. Joe. He's picking up the G.I. Joe.
What's he gonna do? I don't know.
Boom.
Boom.
Marcie, I don't think we have any more questions for you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, this has been so fun.